Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Harbert, your host, and with me, of course, on this Groundhog Day, February 2nd, 2022, is Mr. Brandon No Way. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing pretty good, Mark. It does feel like Groundhog Day. It's the same thing. MLB and the Players Association can't get along, but other than that, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. You know, a lot of little different communities have their own little Puxwatani Phil who pops up on Groundhog Day and sees if there's going to be another 6 weeks of winter. And baseball has its own as well. We've got that special ESPN analyst, Mr. Jeff Passan. And Jeff, just like Puxwatani Phil, is probably popping his head out again today, see if there's actually going to be anything going on with the CBA. I don't know about you, but it seems like his head pops out every day with another little tweet saying, oh, nothing here. Oop, nothing here. Oop, nothing to see.
Yeah, it's the only thing different was yesterday was that they were yelling at each other during negotiations yesterday. That's pretty much the only movement it seems like we've had.
Ooh, at least there's a little motion there. I guess that's usually not a good thing, but I guess we'll see what comes from that. I don't know, my friend. And, you know, you think about what Groundhog Day is about. It is an extension. It is saying, well, it can be. If you see your shadow, it's going to be another 6 weeks of winter. God love you people all up in the Northeast. I know it's crazy right now. You know, does it mean at least another 6 weeks of these guys trying to deliberate and figure something out for the fans? Because that's who they're really working for. They need to be working toward is us. I keep thinking too, what is it? On Groundhog Day, that movie, they had a part in there where there's a Bill Murray, and I can't think of the lady's name for the life of me right now, but he keeps really living the same day over and over and over. He keeps reliving it. And then there was another movie, Edge of Tomorrow. You remember that one?
I remember seeing trailers for it. I never saw it.
Yeah, it's got Tom Cruise in it, Emily Blunt. And the whole thing is there's like aliens who've invaded the earth in the future. And Tom Cruise is trying to figure out how to kill these guys. It gets to a point and he dies, but he gets some alien muck on him. And he goes back to that same day, living it over and over again, trying to figure out how to kill these aliens. I think that while the movie's entitled Edge of Tomorrow, the promo says something like, what is it? Live, die, repeat. I think that's something of the same could be said for the fans' hopes for a baseball season starting on time.
Yeah, and Marvel, they had some time travel scenes as well. I mean, they went back in time in the Endgame movie, and in Doctor Strange they did too, where he was actually negotiating with Dormammu. He just kept going back and forth and kept killing him until he annoyed Dormammu enough, and he just said, you know what, just take whatever you need. So persistence pays off.
So is that what it's going to be, that these two forces that were arguing with one another today, somewhat heatedly, as you said, that it's going to take one of them to relent. Otherwise, they are stuck in this time crux of this loop that going over and over again till the annoyance is just too much and they have to do something.
Yep. And that annoyance is probably losing money.
Yeah, there's much of that going on right now. I mean, if you look at these teams, God knows, wouldn't it be wonderful if they were all open on the stock market and you could see what their results actually were? But that's not the case with most of them. Anyway, the only ones really losing in this time loop, of course, and the emotions that both the Players Association and Major League Baseball need to be paying attention to is the fans.
I mean, that soft deadline's creeping up day by day. Super Bowl's less than 2 weeks. And yeah, we talked about that's kind of the soft deadline.
So, that in mind, what is actually happening? What's actually being talked about? I know you've done a little bit more research in looking at what's happening with the CBA. What are you discovering? What are the points of contention?
Well, the biggest thing I've seen is like the service time and arbitration rules, which there's been progress on, but not a whole lot. And I can start with the arbitration, where originally they were they agreed on eventually doing a pool for arbitration, and the owners were willing to put up 10 million, but the players wanted 105 million.
Hmm.
And what it would do is on the league side, they would make $10 million available to all players with 0 to 3 years service time, except Super 2s who are eligible for arbitration. Whereas the union wanted players to become eligible after 2 years with the $105 million pool. And I believe for both of them, that pool would be for the top 30 prospects or the top 30 arbitrational eligible players, I believe. And that's one thing I really couldn't get nailed down. I know that's true on the league's end. I couldn't exactly find how it is on the union side of the proposal. So I just wanted to be clear on that. But that's what it sounds like it's going with the arbitration side.
Now, what are they talking about again as far as the minimum wage for Major League Baseball players?
From what I saw, it looked like the league wanted to increase that from about 600 to 615 million, while the union is trying to get about 750, or not 600 million, 600,000 to 615,000. And the union wants to try and get about 715,000 as a league minimum.
Okay. And they were looking at a progression year over year, the owners were. And from what I could tell, that the Players Association were looking for just I don't know, were they looking at a flat increase or a gradual increase as well?
I think for most of these things, like their luxury tax idea, it's going to be kind of a more gradual increase, but it's not going to be like slowly over 10 years. It looks like the deadline for both would be about 2026 is what they're aiming for.
Gotcha. Okay. And what are some of the other topics that are still in contention? Some other things they need to figure out?
Well, I got two more that I'm looking at that I have my eye on, and the one is the luxury tax, which, fun fact, there is still grievances pending against teams like the A's, Marlins, Pirates, and our very own Rays. That grievance is still out there. And what the union's proposal is to raise the first threshold from $210 million where it's at right now up to 245, and then eventually to 273 million by 2026. And there could also be penalties for that.
Well, one of the things about that too, Brad, is I'm always thinking about this competitive balance tax. I would think a lot of the people would want this anyway. I would think that the ownership would govern this themselves and wouldn't really need the help of the players if they're looking for some kind of equity across all 30 teams.
Yeah, and with the luxury tax increasing, they'd also increase the penalties as well. And they would be subject to financial penalties, which are double what they are now, and the draft pick penalties, which are also worse than they are now. So that's something that could be worth keeping an eye on. But I've seen nothing to do with a salary floor. And I think that's really what everybody outside of baseball has been saying that baseball needs.
Well, and you're saying outside of baseball, I think a lot of the other professional sports in the U.S. actually do have something along those lines.
Yeah, the salary floor is something that, as far as I know, every other league has, and something that everybody outside of baseball really wants. The luxury tax is something that I don't think it should be like a hard cap, kind of like it is with baseball with the stiff penalties. I think it should be more like the NBA's model, where it's like you can go over it, but there's like a certain amount, and the more you're over it, the more dollar ratio you're going to have to spend. Like, I believe at one point, for every $4.25 you pay a guy, you have to pay $1 towards the luxury tax. Or it's flipped the other way around. I don't know for sure, but I think that's a little bit more something baseball should do because it's a little bit more flexible.
That luxury tax, that competitive balance tax, where does that actually go? Do you remember?
I believe it goes to like the revenue sharing, I believe.
Well, it sounds like, we've hit some primary pieces that the owners and the players still need to resolve. I mean, whether or not it's a competitive tax, the luxury tax, whatever you want to call it, whether or not it's going to be earlier free agency, which I think is something that still needs to be closely looked at. And while we're probably not going to talk about today, service time manipulation is something also that is going to be, I think, part of whatever they need to conclude. Because I'm looking at some what Ken Rosenthal said in an article the other day, saying, by keeping top young players in the minors longer, clubs can gain an extra year control over them before they reach free agency. As with the pre-arb pool and the draft lottery, the league is at least willing for the first time to address a union concern that involves competitive integrity. But there is no simple way to address the issue, and the parties, again, are far apart in their respective proposals.
Yeah, that's something that I think MLB should really look into, as well as an idea that's kind of caught my interest is a draft lottery, which, I mean, I think that would be a better way to prevent tanking, but I also kind of want to avoid like the rigging aspect, because I mean, I'm sure, because, you know, I mean, I've seen it with the NHL where I believe it was the Blackhawks or the Rangers were finished like 13th and or they had like the 13th spot in the draft at one point. Then they went to the draft lottery, and then but then they both ended up getting top 3 picks. And it's like, that's cool, but that brings it a little bit into question, you know, the legitimacy of it, because, you know, the big markets versus a smaller market getting a better draft pick. But I mean, I want the ping pong balls like the NBA would have back in the 80s and 90s. I think that would be an awesome show to watch.
I would love that. It gives a certain element of chance to the whole thing. It cannot be as well scripted as some who think they can, work the system.
But that's something I think could definitely be kept an eye on, and I think it would help out with tanking.
Well, I kind of like to close out this with that article I referenced a moment ago from Ken Rosenthal at the Athletic. And see, in his article, he was saying the league suggests it is responding to the union on multiple fronts, while also yielding on 2 elements the players have long desired: the universal DH. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to stop there, Rosenthal. That if that is something that MLB is saying that we're giving the Players Association, I'm just dying here, boys and girls. That's just crazy. You go and continuously. The union sees the league's proposal of a $10 million pre-arb pool as its only meaningful financial offer, even as owners simultaneously ask for lucrative gains such as expanded playoffs and advertising patches on uniforms. Man, I don't want to see advertising patches on uniforms. Rosenthal concludes with, a new CBA is not close.
Well, that's putting it bluntly to close out his article. At least he's honest.
He's definitely honest, and God knows they've treated that poor guy unfairly recently. So, yeah, so we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, what's happening? Is MLB actually just gambling with the future of the game? The same can be said, I guess, of the Players Association, if they can't come up with something. I was thinking about this. I thought, man, it's kind of like science fiction too. And the number 42. If you ever want to know about life, the universe, and everything, just ask your Google or whatever and say on the search engine, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? It'll say 42. 42. 42 is actually something that came from a book from Douglas Adams, who used to write for Monty Python and then also wrote a book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this grand computer, which digitated and thought from years and decades and centuries and thousands of years, when asked what was the answer to life, the universe, and everything, it said 42. So they needed to build another computer after that to get more answers. So it sounded, a little bit like the MLB and the MLBPA trying to figure things out. It's going to take thousands of years, I believe, before they have it all done. When I think of 42, first thing I always think of course, is Jackie Robinson. And he was the answer to a lot of things in baseball.
Yeah, the answer to hopefully equality. And of course, he was the answer at first to integration in sports. And other people have been 42. Do you know how old Tom Brady was? He just retired. How old he was when he signed with the Bucks?
50?
42.
42.
So 42 seems like it seems just like one of those numbers. Like, you know how some numbers are bad luck, like 13, where 42 is numbers that are good luck or fortune.
Well, I like that. I mean, here we are talking football. Of course, you've got Brandon and myself living here in Tampa. Can't help but look at the GOAT. We salute Tom. I mean, my gosh, what a career. And now at age 44, has decided to retire from the game. And I wish him all the best. I know he'll do fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I put it out yesterday. I couldn't believe Tom Brady, somebody like him, would be playing in the Bucs uniform. And then, I mean, as long as I can remember, the Bucs sucked. I mean, we call them the Succaneers around school. And then here they were, they're having 13 win seasons and winning a Super Bowl, which, I mean, I was too young to remember the first one, but it was really cool to see him win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I remember the days of Tony Dungy, and then the guy who came in after him and came up with a very successful team, but we won't mention him either.
Oh yeah, he's had a little bit of problems.
Yeah. He's kind of gone to the sidelines. I mean, I guess he can have a job in the media now, but but Brady, while he was fantastic in football, they didn't look at him that closely when he first came out there. What was his? When they went through the draft pick for Brady, where did he wind up in the NFL?
199th pick.
109. I think that he said in the past, that was probably one of the things that have motivated him to be as great as he has been in the game. It's like saying, you think what of me? You know, I'm sorry. Don't you realize who I am, in the sense that I have, I mean, his grit and determination. That's what I'm saying. Not who I am. I'm Tom Brady. I'm this guy who's hungry. I'm this guy who's going to make things happen. I'm a guy who's not going to sit down. You know, I'm a guy who's a leader. And, you know, Tom Brady has certainly been that, even, you know, back in the days of high school when he was playing both football and baseball.
He was even drafted in baseball coming out of high school. He was in the 18th round as a catcher by the Montreal Expos. And came down to the choice of play minor league ball for the Expos or go try and be a quarterback in Michigan. And I think he made the right choice. And imagine how much he altered sports history just by choosing football.
It's amazing. And you talk about him being looked at as a catcher, and that's a shot caller position too, Brandon. I mean, while he's making all those great decisions as a quarterback over the years for the Patriots and then for the Bucs, when he squatted behind the home plate, you know, he's out there sending signals to the pitcher. I mean, he's kind of controlling the game. What's going to come next? The leadership position was even there. And from what I understand, reading some things about Brady with the Expos, is when he was out there, I guess for their first spring training, and a lot of the guys saying, you know, wait a minute, I hear you got a football scholarship to Michigan and you're playing ball with us. What, are you going to sit in the minors for a few years? I mean, we didn't even pick you to, what'd you say, the 18th draft?
Yeah, 18th round.
18th round. And you want to play baseball? I'm sure he was questioned on that a few times, but he certainly made the right choice. Do you think we'll see something like we did with Michael Jordan from the Bulls? That, you know, once he retired from basketball, he decided to take on a career in baseball.
I mean, I hope not, because I mean, he's 44 years old. I don't think he can really do something like that anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, but I don't think now that he could. But I learned a long time ago, don't doubt Tom Brady.
Yeah. I maybe he'll do some golf, or maybe he'll buy a baseball team or somebody. But when you say that, and I think about 44, you're right. If I looked at MLB right now to see some of the older players in the MLB, probably start with like Pujols, who's about 42, I believe, and Rich Hill, who pitched for the Rays for a little while ago. He also, I think, is 42. So those two guys lead the pack in age. Maybe we won't see Brady in baseball, but I wouldn't bet on it anyway. Speaking of betting and baseball, I was just kind of casually looking over some news popping up of the day, and I saw that in Chicago, they were going to be moving two of the statues of the players they have out there, Santos and Williams. I thought, well, they were taking them down. What do you guys do? Well, we're going to mothball them for a little bit, and then we're going to create like a little hall of statues. But what was the purpose of actually moving them? Well, it's because right in front of Wrigley Field, there's going to be a new sports book. And folks, if you don't know what a sports book is, just imagine some big, nice lounge like in Vegas, and then with screens and places where you can place bets on all kinds of games and teams. All of this smack dab right in front of Wrigley Field. If you're thinking to yourself, well, gambling in baseball, there's been this wall there for a long time. And God knows when you look back to the Black Sox, you look back at Pete Rose, and MLB's really been a big naysayer over the years. But back in 2018, MLB and MGM, the gambling part of it, came up with a partnership where they were going to wind up sharing information, sharing branding, and that stuck in my craw. We were talking about this last year, weren't we, Brandon?
Yeah, we did, and it wasn't as widely available what they were going to do with it back then, and now we've actually seen a sports book actually open up, and it hasn't been open up for baseball games yet, but they were taking bets, and I'm talking about the bet MGM won at Nationals Park. They actually took bets this weekend for the championship games in the NFL.
Wow.
So it's a relatively new thing, and from what I've seen, it's been a pretty big popular success.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, if you're looking at one more way, then MLB is going to be making money from its fans. I'm not sure what kind of partnership or cut that it may be getting with MGM, but I do find it that just disturbing. I'm looking here. Let's see at the release back in November 27, 2018. It said, this is from a press release. The new multi-year agreement designates MGM Resorts as the first ever, quote, official gaming partner of MLB and official entertainment partner of MLB. I think some of the first things they were doing with this was trying to keep, not go full-fledged, not put this right where you buy a hot dog and make a bet all at the same place. So that they were actually starting with sports books that were close to the stadium, but not necessarily attached. Is that, I don't know, have you seen if they're actually attached to any of the MLB stadiums yet? There's only a couple out there, I believe, thus far.
I haven't seen outside pictures of Nationals Park, but it sounds like it's kind of inside, but you can't access it from inside the stadium. You can only access it from outside. And Wrigley, looking at the mock-ups of it, I mean, it looks really cool. It's like it's attached to Wrigley, but it's really not. It's about as close as you can get. And I think, because from what I've seen, it's not exactly legal at the moment to have a sports book inside of a stadium, to where it's going to be right there and sort of like a design to expand to where they can eventually expand it to attach to inside the stadium.
Yeah, I think they've planned in advance saying, okay, once that time comes, let's go ahead and have an architect to put all this into place. Make sure that what we're building now can be incorporated. I don't doubt that for a moment. So as the laws change, that may as well. And I was very vehement about opposition to this when it was first announced about the Nationals last year and being the first one to have one of these. And let's see, that particular one, that's with Bet MGM, talking about Nationals Park. And I believe Wrigley's doing it with, what is that with? Dang on.
DraftKings.
DraftKings, thank you. DraftKings. So this isn't just one company working with this, And the funny thing was, the whole DC thing, initially, they were going to partner with FanDuel. No. They were initially, I think, going to put something together with Caesars. DC's been starting, they approved a lot of things early on. Is that where the Audi Stadium is?
That is correct.
And that's with the Major League Soccer FanDuel Sportsbook in there.
Yeah, I have a list of places that either have a sportsbook or are gonna put some in. If you would like me to read them off to you,
I'd love to hear that.
Phoenix Suns, they have a FanDuel sportsbook that opened up last September. Also in Chicago, the United Center, which is home of the Bulls and the Blackhawks, plans on opening one up if they can this fall before the seasons open up. Capital One Arena in Washington, where the Capitals, Wizards, and Mystics play, opened a sportsbook back in 2020. Caesars, they plan a book outside of Chase Field, where Diamondbacks play, of course, Audi Field, DC United, and there is legislation pending in New York that would allow betting kiosks in venues like Madison Square Garden, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, and Highmark Stadium, where the Buffalo Bills play.
Wow.
And this is all courtesy of Tampa Bay Times.
This is just getting uglier and uglier and scarier from my perspective. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the whole thing with gambling. I'll own up to going out to Churchill Downs and putting down a $2 ticket on a horse. But I guarantee you this is more than folks that's putting down $2, $3, $4, $5. This is looking at fans who maybe was going to spend $10 on a hot dog, but maybe they're going to spend 20 or more at the betting window. So I don't know what that's going to be like. I don't think it's going to have a positive influence. And if there is additional revenue made by MLB through this, how much of that's going to go back into the stadiums? How much of that's going to go back into nurturing players? How much of that's going to go back into something with the fans? I mean, all right, I'm going to get a little bit more on that high horse. I mean, we look at what we've seen with lotteries and such in the past. The state says, yeah, once we bring a lottery here, we're going to do a lot for giving more money to education. And I don't think that always proved true. And it's, to me, there's a lot of promises, a lot of whiz bang, buzzers going off, lights, flashing lights, all of this. Doesn't it look pretty? But in the end, it's just another way to get the fans money and not necessarily deliver a better product.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about this last year, and I agree with you. You have very valid concerns, but I just think it's sort of the way of the future. And I mean, one of the reasons the NFL is so successful is because of the gambling aspect. And I think to really stay relevant, baseball has to bring this in. And I thought it'd be like an app or something you could download. I didn't think a full-blown sports book would be going into the stadiums.
Yeah.
But they could probably do things kind of like with alcohol sales, where you can only do it for a certain amount of time, or you can put out the gambling help hotline if you're having difficulty, and helplines like that, or promote healthy gambling habits, stuff like that you can do. But I do think you have a very valid point.
Well, you may be right about the wave of the future, and I'd kind of like to resist that wave. I don't think we're going to be able to do much about it now. There's a guy, was it Craig Catera? I want to talk to him sometime. He's got a book coming out about, fans being able to do more. And he wouldn't say necessarily to control, but to impact what's going on with sports. I want to see if we get him on the show sometime, because fans need to be able to make a difference. I mean, right now it feels like Groundhog Day all over the place to me. I don't know about you. I mean, we see Jeff Passan popping his little head in and out, and whether it's with the CBA or what's going on, whether or not it's some of the stuff with the sports book, it's getting to be ridiculous. I mean, it's like the great marketer for shampoo who came up with, what was it? Wash, rinse. Oh, no. Here it is. Here's what they came up with. It was apply, wash, rinse, repeat. Repeat. How many times did you do that? That's kind of what this feels like. It feels like a Groundhog Day, where we keep repeating the same thing over and over. And with a CBA, damn it, get it done.
This is what makes our job so fun, or at least our hobby so fun, whatever we want to call this, is we get to find out and speculate and see how things goes. Like, this sportsbook thing could be a complete and utter disaster for all we know, or it could be a great success. But it's fun to just see things develop, and hopefully the CBA develops a little bit quicker, because it looks like spring training on time. Oops. It looks like spring training starting on time is pretty much dead, but there's still hope for at least the regular season being on time.
Yeah. I hear that. And right now I'm casting those thoughts to the side. I'm not going to live on that eternal Groundhog Day. I'm not going to live with Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise on Live, Die, Repeat. I am going to live on what I expect might happen on April 5th, and that will be opening day of minor league baseball. So my heart's going out to minor league baseball, MLB, MLBPA. Guys, I hope you figure it out. If not, I've got a plan.
I think a lot of people do, which, I mean, that points to trouble with MLB. And if they don't recognize that, and if both sides don't recognize that, then they're going to be losing out long term. Because look what the last lockout did.
Yeah. So ugliness, loss of fans. I don't want to see it. I don't know, man. But it does feel like it's going over and over again there, Mr. Dormammu.
It does. They've come to bargain with you.
All right, guys. Hopefully you guys figured it out, because I haven't yet. Brandon, you want to take us out here? You got any other final comments?
Yes. Remember to like, rate, review. That helps us out. And you can find us all over the place on all podcast platforms. And you can follow me at Sports Splits Pod and Mark at The Baseball Biz. And with that, thanks for listening. And hopefully see you next week.
Thank you, Brandon, man. So again, folks, we appreciate you and hope you've enjoyed this show. If you want more depth on some of these pieces, let us know. We always look forward to your all's remarks, and see you again. Again. It feels like we're starting over again.
It does, you know.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music rocking forward.
Thanks for listening.